There's something about the hours between midnight and dawn when the world feels like it's holding its breath. That's when I used to work, alone, at a gas station just down the street from my apartment. People always said it was risky for a woman to work graveyard by herself, but honestly, it felt safe. The sheriff's office was right across the street, just a parking lot away. If anything happened, help was only a shout away. Most nights, I'd see maybe 30 customers, if that. Sometimes, I'd stand behind the counter for an hour, just listening to the hum of the coolers and the buzz of the lights. It was boring, but it was quiet. I liked that. It was around 3:30 in the morning. I slipped outside to sweep the lot, check the trash, and if I'm honest, have a cigarette. I popped in one earbud and let myself drift a little. Music in one ear, the quiet in the other. That's when I noticed someone across the road, in the sheriff's office lot. At first, all I could see was a figure, back turned, swaying, head down. The way he moved, it looked like he was taking a leak right there, up against the brick wall. The sheriff's office closed at 4 in the afternoon and didn't open again till 6 the next morning. I remember thinking, why would anyone pick that spot? It made no sense, but I just kept my eyes down, tried not to stare. But then I saw the back of his shirt, ripped, dirty white. I recognized him. He'd come in earlier that night, maybe 4 hours ago. He gave me the creeps then, too. He was slurring his words, eyes a little too wide, that kind of drunk where you can't tell if someone's about to laugh or start a fight. I didn't want to draw attention, so I looked away. Just swept a little slower, tried to act like I hadn't seen him. That usually worked with drunks. Don't make eye contact. Don't give them a reason. But then a car pulled into the lot, headlights sweeping across the pavement. I was still outside, halfway through my smoke, dustpan and squeegee propped up nearby. I could feel him watching, back and forth between me and the car.
You should be careful out here, you know?
I tried to laugh it off, made some awkward joke about how he should be more afraid of me. I don't even remember exactly what I said. It was just something to fill the silence. Just then, the man across the road started yelling, loud, angry, but I couldn't make out a word. He was arguing with himself, hands waving, voice echoing across the empty street. The customer glanced at him, then back at me, worry written all over her face.
Seriously though, take care, okay?
She got in her car and drove off. I watched her taillights disappear, then looked back across the street. The man was closer now, standing right at the edge of the road, staring at the gas station. He was swaying so hard, I thought he'd fall over. I didn't say a word. I just kept my eyes on him, slow steps back toward the doors. Something about his face. There was a darkness there, but his eyes were wild, darting around. I'd seen that look before, working graveyard. The crazy-eyed ones are always the worst. I slipped back inside, heart thumping. There were still almost 3 hours left in my shift, and I was alone for at least 2 more. I tried to steady my breathing, but every sound felt sharp, like it was aimed right at me. I sat down at the computer and typed up a temporarily closed sign, just in case. Maybe it was overkill, but I'd rather look paranoid than be caught off guard. My hands were shaking a little as I printed it out. I was just coming around the counter with the sign when I saw him. He'd crossed the road. My heart dropped. I rushed to the doors and barely got the second one locked before he stumbled into the parking lot, eyes fixed on me. I gave him the universal "cut it out" sign, hand across my throat, shaking my head, trying to make it clear. We're closed. Don't even try. He was yelling something angrily, but the words were garbled. I couldn't make out what he was saying at the time. He started to walk away, but not before screaming something at me, loud, almost animal. He threw his arms around, stumbling backwards, but I didn't relax, not for a second. I started to realize just how wrong this all felt. This wasn't the kind of shift I signed up for. I could feel my skin prickling, every instinct telling me to get somewhere safer. But there was nowhere else to go. I picked up the phone and dialed the police. My hands were sweaty, voice low so he wouldn't hear. I told them there was a drunk guy causing trouble, that I was alone and the doors were locked. I hung up, and before I could even set the phone down, I saw him again, right at the door. He started pulling at the handle, banging with his fist, then backed up and ran at it, shoulder first. The glass rattled but held. Without thinking, I shouted through the glass that I'd called the cops, that his ass was about to be grass. As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted it. He bolted, just like that. 1 second he was there, the next he was gone, sprinting off into the dark. I waited, heart hammering, but he didn't come back. The police showed up a few minutes later. They drove around the block, checked the neighborhoods, even circled the back alleys, but they didn't find anyone. He was on foot, but it was like he'd vanished into thin air. Since he hadn't actually hurt me and they couldn't find him, I didn't fill out a report. The officers told me to keep the doors locked and call again if he came back. I nodded, but I knew I wouldn't relax for the rest of the night. I spent the rest of my shift behind thick glass, doors locked, lights on bright. Every time a car passed, every time the wind rattled the trash can outside, I jumped. I kept thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't gotten the door locked in time. For months after, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there. Every shift, I'd check the shadows, watch the corners of the lot, flinch at every noise. I never saw him again, but that didn't matter. The fear stuck with me. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice, warning him about the cops. Maybe if I hadn't, they would have caught him. Maybe I wouldn't have spent so long looking over my shoulder. But I'll never know. I'm just glad I don't work there anymore.
I know I should be grateful for a chill job at an ice rink, especially as we gear up for a scorching summer. But I'm thinking about quitting. I'm too creeped out to go back there. I needed a summer job, and I was a little surprised by the lack of competition for a gig at the local rink. My first day was right after the interview. The pay wasn't great, but the expectations weren't bad either. Help customers, keep the place clean, restock the restrooms, that sort of work. The most important task was a team effort. Keep the rink temperature below freezing at all times. That made sense. It's an ice rink, not a swimming pool. At regular intervals, I'd check the thermostat to make sure the rink remained between 19 and 29 degrees. Doing so ensured that the main room was always nice and chilly, my own frosty oasis in the middle of town. My boss was the face of the business, so he was usually up front serving guests or back in his office. Whenever he came out, he'd check the rink's temperature, even if I had just checked it myself. One day, I clocked in a few minutes late and found the boss hustling toward the thermostat. He seemed startled when he noticed me.
Seen anybody around here yet?
I checked the clock to see that we were still nearly an hour away from opening.
Good.
Then he asked me to help set up a new game in the arcade. It was a massive cabinet, big screen, 2-seater bench, huge speakers. I plugged in the power cord and fired up the cabinet. The screen flickered, the speakers roared to life. and then the whole place went dark. I looked out into the main room to see the boss sprinting for the breaker box. The girl at the concession counter dropped what she was doing and disappeared into the kitchen. I left the arcade to apologize for the mishap, and then I noticed the smell. It was like someone left meat out and went on vacation. The stench was heavy and sickening, so strong I could taste it.
The wiring's screwy. One thing goes wrong and the whole place loses power.
He snapped a few switches back into place and closed the box. Behind us, machines hummed again. He sighed and wiped the sweat from his forehead.
It's just an old building, that's all.
He checked the thermostat and stayed by the rink until it was time to open. The smell had mostly dissipated by the time customers started filtering in, but it was hard to forget. It was still in my clothes when I went home. A few days later, the boss had to run errands, leaving me and the concession girl to hold the fort down. Everything seemed fine at first, but then a group of kids approached me from the arcade. They said the new cabinet wasn't working right. The screen kept freezing and they couldn't get their quarters back. My boss had briefly showed me how to troubleshoot these machines, so I did what I could to diagnose the problem. It took longer than I'd like to admit. I was hesitant to unplug the game and restart it, but I tried everything I could to get the game working again. If I had to refund a few quarters, I imagined the boss wouldn't mind. At some point, I realized I was sweating. I dressed warm for work since the main room stays in the mid-50s, but I suddenly felt too hot. I told the kids I'd be right back and tried not to look conspicuous as I made my way to the rink thermostat. 30 degrees, still below freezing. I returned to the arcade to realize that it was the air conditioner that was struggling. It was blazing hot outside, and our AC was fighting hard to keep the room cool. I finally got the game up and running, then ran by the concession counter for lunch. The late afternoon rush kicked in, and I was on my feet for hours. Without the boss up front, I was renting out skates, checking the restrooms, and doing my best to keep the new arcade game running. I didn't get a moment to catch my breath until closing time. I shut off the lights and flipped the front door sign from open to closed. Then realized it had been hours since I checked the rink thermostat. I knew I had to take a look before I left for the night. 35 degrees. Not great, not terrible. I adjusted the target temperature and waited until the system started pumping more coolant beneath the ice. I headed back to the door but stopped at the hallway to the restrooms. There was someone standing at the end of the hall. I was startled, but more than anything, I just wanted to go home. "We're closed," I said. "I have to lock up now." He didn't move. "Do you need to use the restroom first?" I thought maybe he wasn't feeling well. Concession food can be rough on some people's stomachs. He turned to face me. The hall was dark except for the exit light over my head, which cast a dim red glow over his face. His head hung low, and he wore a vacant expression, like he was asleep on his feet. Then he lifted his head to look at me. I didn't say a word. The more I stared, the more the features of his face seemed to be out of place, like it was just a mask. His eyes looked cloudy in the red light, but I could tell that he was looking at me. Then an intense shiver came over me. It was an ice-cold chill that pierced to my core. It had to be fear, but I wrapped my arms close to warm up. Then he was gone. I looked behind me, then back down the hall. There was no one there. I didn't stick around to check the restrooms. I got out of there as soon as I could. The next day, I told my boss about the man in the hall. He listened quietly and took a while before speaking.
What did he look like?
I described the lifeless face and the dull eyes, feeling a hint of a chill just recalling it.
And he was dressed a little outdated?
I thought about it. The man wore a suit, but maybe the lapels were a little too big. The pants flared a bit wide. That wasn't what concerned me at the time, though. Maybe so.
Did the ice rink go above freezing yesterday?
It did, but I fixed it before leaving last night.
We've got to keep an eye on it. You'll see people like that around here. It'll be okay. Just keep an eye on the rink.
I looked over to the concession counter. My coworker had been listening. She only met my eyes for a second, then she went about her work. We'd be opening soon, and the heat was sure to drive a crowd our way. It's a brutal summer, and when the temperatures rise so high, everybody blasts their AC. It puts a serious strain on the power grid. Yesterday we tipped the meter too far. The power went out across downtown. My boss went out to fire up the generator, telling me to make sure nobody went near the ice. At first, customers sat in the dining area and waited to see if the power would return. I couldn't blame them. The air was still cool, and anything was better than going back out into the heat. As the day went on, though, the chill faded, and there was no point in sticking around. Our customers left, and it was just me and my coworker. Our boss clearly wasn't going to get generator up and running anytime soon, so I hoped that he would just let us go. My coworker went outside to ask. The air was starting to turn muggy, so I went to check the thermostat. It had a backup battery, so I could at least see the rink's temperature. 40 degrees. It was only going to climb from there. With my back to the ice, I felt something move just behind me. The stench of spoiled meat returned, thick in the humid air. My legs quivered, but I ran for the door. I was in a hurry, so I decided to cut through the ice rink. That was a stupid idea. I started slipping immediately and fell hard on my back. I looked up into a crowd of dead faces. There were dozens of them. Dead, bloody bodies, all standing on the ice. Their faces were frozen in horrified, silent howls, while some looked as if they had been beaten or crushed. They all watched me with pale, cloudy eyes. I heard myself scream, and I scrambled for footing. I fell again and again, trying to crawl across the ice. Finally, I reached the other side and bolted to the exit. As I pushed through the doors, I could see that my coworker's car was gone. She had the right idea. I didn't stop to lock up. I took today off and called my boss to tell him what happened. He didn't question any of it. He seemed to know what was going on, so I asked for an explanation.
You know the gravel lot down the street? There used to be an office building there. It collapsed years ago, when I was just a kid. A lot of people died.
I had never heard the whole story before. Apparently, there were so many casualties, the local morgue was overwhelmed. They had to store bodies at the ice rink to keep them cool. They were there on the ice for days until they could be moved or identified. Now I understand what I saw, but that doesn't make it any better. I don't want to go to work tomorrow.
It's spooky season, which always gets me talking with buddies about the creepy things we've been through. I almost never touch on this story, though, because it's not one of those classic scary stories everyone likes to share around a few beers. I used to work night shifts at this large manufacturing facility. Night shift was a very small crew. 5 security, 5 of us running admin and packing. As admin staff, I sat with security as they'd switch between patrolling and monitoring the cameras. It was usually pretty silent and boring. Now, I'm not sure how the building got its haunted story. No one besides us ever wanted to work night because of the rumors. None of us ever had any experiences. No one died there. No crazy accidents happened. It wasn't destroyed and rebuilt. it was peaceful and uneventful. But stories always spread, as they tend to do with big, dark, creepy spaces. And it was creepy. It's surrounded with woods, circled with fencing, mostly empty at night, which made it feel incredibly imposing and empty. Creepy motion-activated lights inside and out. Sounds carried and echoed. But still, none of us ever had any experiences there. Until this. It was around Halloween, maybe a week or two before it. I was halfway into my shift, making it my lunch hour. It was chilly, and I went to my car to grab my bigger jacket and have a smoke break. I was right outside the back door, which the fencing runs closest to. It's maybe 10 yards off the back door. The only light is motion activated, and I had to keep making grand arm movements to keep it on. It's all grass and shadows up to the fence, and the light doesn't really hit that far. I was watching videos on my phone, and the light cut out. I sat in the dark a bit, sipping my coffee and finishing my cigarette. As I was finishing, I reached up, waved about to activate the light to find the ashtray. But as the light flickered on, I heard a noise at the fence across from me. We do get some animals out there, and they could get startled. It was all explained in my head instantly. But as I stood up, I heard the fence keep slightly jingling. When I looked up, I didn't see much. The light didn't really illuminate much outside its circle on the ground. I don't know why, but my first thought was to say, "Hello?" When I did, the sound stopped for a moment. I squinted into the darkness, trying to adjust. The light went out. There in the darkness, the moon had a little more effect lighting up the area. The fence started lightly jingling again, really lightly. As my eyes adjusted better, I saw movement. It looked like a person opposite me at the fence, fidgeting with the links. I thought, this must be a kid trying to spook us. Maybe they were going to break in and ghost hunt. Some high school kids have before without knowing the building never closed, and we were usually pretty cool with them poking around as long as they didn't touch anything and made it fast, so they could run tell their friends they lived through it. But that wasn't really common, and this was one person, alone. It felt off. I radioed in with my walkie to desk security. "Hey, we have a visitor out by the north door, behind the fence."
We aren't reading any movement at the fence. Is it in the tree line?
Negative. They're fiddling with the fence, right in front of me. This all happened in the span of seconds. My cigarette butt was still in my hands, and I just barely swallowed my last sip of coffee. They didn't even have the chance to reply to me when from the fence I heard this massively louder thrash of the lynx, and all I saw was the figure full-on sprinting at me. I made a terribly embarrassing choking noise and crushed my coffee cup against the knob, trying to rush myself in. The fence is so close, it's not going to take more than a few bounds to reach me. I pushed myself in so hard and held the knob in place, trying to figure the deadbolt into place. The knob was flicking down hard against my hold. I could hear and feel something moving against the opposite side of the door. I radioed back, "Get down here now," but I already heard steps coming my way. The knob stopped moving by the time they got there. It was all over with. Back at the office, the security staff tried to play it off, like I was having a laugh about it. Like this was a great Halloween joke I played. I didn't understand why they weren't taking it seriously until I saw the playback. It was just me outside. There was nothing there. My brain couldn't explain what I experienced outside while confronting the video. I immediately thought this was a big goof on me. Maybe they fiddled with the footage and had someone scare me, but they genuinely thought I was the one goofing with them. We were doing that whole back and forth, okay, whose idea was this? Who is messing with who? Until the second time watching the playthrough. We noticed the way the door handle kept moving even when I removed my hand from it. Both the inside camera and the outside caught it. I noticed right before I panicked and turned to run inside, the fence made a slight jolt as if it was pushed. There were no holes in the fence or any kind of cuts made where someone could squeeze through. There were no creepy shadows or unexplained wisps of smoke or lights or movement besides those. Just me in the night, jumping out of my skin and running inside. I kept trying to think back to when I jumped, when that figure burst at me full speed, if the light activated for their movement or mine. I couldn't decide. I couldn't remember exactly. It was so fast. But nobody there wanted to admit anything happened to me. It was tricks of the moonlight, overactive imagination and too much coffee, branches against the chain links. No one's ever experienced anything weird here, and it wouldn't just start up here now for no reason. I didn't make a fuss. I didn't want to argue it. They already thought I was being weird about it. Maybe I was. I went about finishing my shift, but no one used the back door again that night, and it remained locked. The longest employed security was finishing up the shift at the desk, with me in the office. It was before dawn. The morning shift was trickling in the parking lot. He watched the cameras in silence while I typed away.
I never really liked the North End. It feels like someone's eyes are always on me.
It's honestly the most he's ever said to me in the year plus I worked there. The most I've ever heard him say. I felt like that statement held even more weight for that alone. I didn't quit though. I stayed on another 7 months until the company was bought out, and they stopped overnight shifts to pile more work on day shifts for less money with fewer employees. There was never another incident. I never actually went out there again though. I stopped smoking, took my breaks out in the lobby, or wasted time chatting with coworkers. But I made excuses not to sit outside, to be honest. I feel like a few of us did. I have never before or since had any moments where I felt like my imagination got the better of me, and I truly believe that wasn't the case here. I keep thinking back at the door handle jerking down when I was steps back on the walkie. That had to be proof I wasn't imagining the whole thing. No one ever brought it up again, and wherever anyone asked about working in the old crappy factory, everyone would say, "Oh, we never saw anything up there. It's just a boring building at night." I would just smile and keep my side of the story to myself. But I wondered if anyone else was holding stories to themselves. Maybe they'd slip out after a few beers and fuel a few more questions about the haunted factory,